Hello there, everyone. I'm Jonathan Little. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today, we are going to be discussing dominating tournaments. And we're going to be discussing specifically short stacked strategy. I have a big presentation lined up here today. I probably won't get through it all, but I will do my absolute best. We go through a ton of this in the newest course on pokercoaching.com that just got released today called Tournament Domination. Make sure you check it out. If you all are here, say something in the chat so I know I'm not talking into the ether. Recognize that as stacks get shallower, you have to use different strategies. A lot of people do not realize this. They think that they should play roughly the same preflop ranges in all scenarios. But take a look at this. In early position, here is roughly what you should raise based on your stack depth. Recognize how the ranges change, right? Here we have 60 big blinds, 30 big blinds, and 15 big blinds. And as you see, 15 big blinds deep, you have to be tight. Also notice, as stacks get shallower, offsuit high cards gain a little bit of value, whereas suited connectors and small pairs lose value from early position. So, what a lot of people do wrong is they just memorize a chart like this for 60 big blinds deep, and they use it in all scenarios. And that's a mistake. If you are consistently raising the pocket 2s or 3s or 4s, or 7-6 suited from early position, 30 or 15 big blinds deep, you're going to be losing a lot of money. Take a look from the button. 60, 30, and 15 big blinds deep. Notice 15 big blinds deep, the dark red is going all in. So on the button, 15 big blinds deep should have an all-in range, but not from early position, as we just saw. But again, notice how the ranges are very different in their overall composition, right? Notice on the button, 60 big blinds deep, you get to play down to King 5 offsuit, 10-7 offsuit, 9-7 offsuit, and lots of suited stuff. 30 big blinds deep, you're supposed to fold pocket 2s. I probably wouldn't do that in the real world. But a lot of these offsuit hands are not quite good enough, and a lot of the suited hands are not quite good enough. And then 15 big blinds deep, you don't even get to play 6-5 suited or 5-4 suited, barely any 7-6 suited or 10-6 suited on the button. Notice King 7, King 5, King 4, 9-8, 10-8. All of these are not playable. It is worth noting 15 big blinds deep, you go all in with the hands in dark red because you don't really want to raise those and then fold them to a shove or raise and have to call a shove. And then you're min raising all of these best hands up here, pocket 7s and better, suited broadways, ace king, ace queen, and then calling if your opponent shoves, and you're min-raising these other hands and folding them to an all-in. Okay? What about when somebody raises in front of you? How does that thing change things? Well, quite a bit. What we're going to look at here is we're going to look at the button versus an under-the-gun raise, over here, a button versus a low jack raise in the middle, and a button versus a cutoff raise for 60 big blinds deep. Then we're going to go down to 25 and then 15. And we're going to see some pretty big differences. Notice, button against all position raises is using somewhat mixed frequencies with a generally, call it polarized range. Notice you're 3-betting a lot of the best hands plus some of these ace-x suited and king-x suited and small suit high card stuff. And the range gets wider and wider as your position improves. 25 big blinds deep though. Notice now the 3-betting range is very different, and you start using some all-ins, right? If someone shoves, they can't be strong. I mean, what do you mean? We just showed 15 big blinds deep. Here's what they should be shoving. These hands are all perfectly fine and good. You have to realize you could tell your opponent what you're doing. You could say, I'm going to use this strategy, and there's nothing they could do about it. That is the power of GTO strategies. You can literally tell your opponent what you're doing, and they will still break even or lose. They only break even if they play perfectly against you. All right, take a look at this. Now we are re-raising small with only the absolute best hands. Aces, kings, some queens, and some jacks. An ace-king suited, maybe some ace-queen suited, and then some blocker bluffs. Notice a lot of the bluffs shift compared to 60 big blinds deep from having lots of suited connectors and whatnot to having more random offsuit high card hands, but not a lot of small 3-betting in general. There's just not a lot of small 3-betting in this spot because you really don't want to be re-raising to 5.5 big blinds over a 2 big blind raise and then having to fold to a shove. So you're only doing it with that, like the absolute best hands plus a few blocker bluffs. 15 big blinds deep, We're even tighter. Notice our calling range starts to get very, 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 very constricted because you don't really want to call a 2 big blind raise, see the flop, miss the flop, and then have to fold, right? Also, your implied odds are far worse, which is why, again, suited connectors and just marginal hands are not that good. They are not playable against a raise. Do notice 15 big blinds deep, you are slow playing pocket aces every time. A lot of people do not do this. They think they just should shove it all in. But by calling with aces, you get to call some of these other slightly weaker hands, and that allows you to play them profitably. You have to realize, whenever we are playing no limit hold'em, your only options are not all in or fold. You would like to call, and you can profitably call in a spot where you cannot profitably go all in. And by trapping aces, you get to also call slightly wider. And you can see these patterns repeat themselves over and over and over and over and over, where you have to play tighter, more constricted ranges as stacks get shallower in general. Suited connectors lose value as you get shorter, and you start using more all in. So here are 60 big blinds deep, big blind versus under the gun versus low jack and versus cutoff. Notice a lot of the best hands 3-betting, and then a smattering of suited aces, suited connectors, and some offsuit cards, right? With a pretty wide calling range. Notice, though, you actually get to call wider as stacks get shallower. A lot of people don't realize this. Take a look at big blind versus under the gun. 25 big blinds deep. Notice we get to call like queen 5 offsuit, 7-5 offsuit, etc. 60 big blinds deep, though, you don't. And that's because these hands are going to realize their equity very poorly from out of position. But if you make a pair or some sort of a draw, 25 big blinds deep, you can just load the money in, right? And then 15 big blinds deep, you also get to call quite wide. Notice again, the offsuit hands really don't like it. Offsuit hands are pretty bad, that are terrible. Everything else is fine, though. Did I not have this thing edited? Big blind versus... No, this is the big blind strategy. I don't know. Maybe did I have something edited wrong? I don't know. Oh, yeah. Big blind, thank you. Thank you. Seems a tad loose. Haha. I mean, look, you got to realize GTO strategies get in there and battle. A lot of people think GTO strategies are tight and straightforward, but no. You are getting in there and you are battling. Notice, though, again, the hands that are re-raising and are going all in are very different than the hands that are re-raising 60 big blinds deep, right? I mean, just compare these two strategies. They are like night and day different. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think they should be using similar strategies from each position based on the position, not based on the stack depth. But the stack depth is vitally, vitally, vitally important. Let's talk about post-flop strategy a little bit today. Recognize that pre-flop ranges change significantly, and that is going to heavily impact the type of hands that people can have after the flop. For example, take a look at this chart here. Notice big blind versus button. The big blind has almost no ace-x at all in their range when they call. Only a few low suited aces. Which is kind of cool to think about, right? Notice here, when the big blind 3-bets 60 big blinds deep, they should be missing a lot of these middle suited connected hands. Also kind of worth noting, right? So realize that the ranges are going to change a decent amount of the time. That said, you're going to find that in general, your continuation betting frequencies when you are playing shallower stacked and deeper stacked are going to be roughly the same, but you're going to be using smaller bet sizes in general because you don't need to put in as much money to get all of your money in by the river when you feel inclined. You're also going to find that equity denial is far more important as stacks get shallower. If someone bets, you're going to be check shoving all in more often as stacks get shallower, just because if your hand is like top pair is pretty good, you're usually pretty happy. That said, your hands that are very strong and maybe even a little bit vulnerable are going to be way more inclined to slow play. So you can be raising all in more with hands like top pair, that like one pair type hands that are very vulnerable, but you're going to be calling way more with your super duper nuts, because if you have 2 pair and you're 15 big blinds deep and your opponent happens to beat it, you only lose 15 big blinds. It's not the end of the world. So this is an example of preflop ranges being different, right? I mean, postflop, you always want to be considering who has the range advantage and nut advantage. And notice that if you raise from the button and the big blind calls, and you presume they are playing the wrong strategy, well, you're going to be assigning them a very, very incorrect range. And if you consistently give your opponents incorrect ranges, it's not going to work out for you. So as stacks get shallower, bet sizes are going to shift downwards. If there's a spot where you're playing 60 big blinds deep and you know you're supposed to bet big, you're still going to bet big, but big is going to be something like, well, if it's normally pot, maybe it's going to go down to something like 60% pot. If normally you're supposed to use something like 60% pot, now you're going to bet 25% pot. Essentially, you just don't need to put in as much money on the earlier betting rounds. So take a look at this. Here we have a spot where under the gun +1 raises and the big blind calls. Flop becomes 9-8-4. 60 big blinds deep. You should know on this dynamic board, which is a board that contains a straight draw or flush draw, but no straight or flush yet. This is a spot where you're going to be betting with a polarized range, usually using a big size. So, as we can see, that is the case here. Notice we are potting it 50% of the time and using the other bet sizes not quite so often, 6% and 4%. For all practical purposes, you can never use those and just bet pot if you want to simplify this, with about a 40% checking range. So notice what is betting on the 9-8-4. Well, it's going to be top pairs and better. Notice something like Queen 9 and better is betting a lot of the time. All the over pairs are betting. And then draws. What are draws on 9-8-4? Well, it's going to be various over cards, especially with backdoor flush draws, and especially those that have trouble winning at the showdown. So you see a lot of king high and worse betting because they have 6 outs, essentially a draw, right? A 6-out draw. Whereas we see stuff like ace king doing a lot of checking because ace king can conceivably check it down and win. All of these suited hands that are betting are mostly with backdoor flush draws. Notice the marginal hands like an 8, like notice king 8, jack 8, 10-8, 8-7 are doing a lot of checking. Under pairs to the 8s, going to be doing a lot of checking. And that's about that. Notice also pocket 9s and pocket 8s are betting the majority of the time, right? Notice 9-8's betting every time, still with a big size. Compare this to 25 big blinds deep. We're still betting roughly the same amount of the time. Notice 65% instead of 60%. It's roughly the same. But we're betting using a smaller size now. Notice now the preferred size is 46% pot or 17%. I'm sorry, 60% pot or 25% pot, with the pot size bet basically never being used. Am I saying that you're betting smaller because if you get check shoved, well, look, whenever you're betting smaller, you want to be able to bet smaller and then still fold with your bluffs, but also you want to be able to get in by the river when you feel inclined. And 60 big blinds deep, to get it in by the river, you do need to start betting pot on the flop, pot on the turn, pot on the river. Whereas 25 big blinds deep, you can use much smaller bets and still get it all in by the river when we feel inclined. Okay? Notice also I said that some of the best hands are going to slow play more. Take a look. Pocket 9s and 8s check a decent amount of the time on the 9-8-4, 25 big blinds deep, whereas they check less often, 60 big blinds deep. Something else I didn't mention, but you'll find that some draws that do not want to bet and then fold to a shove will not bet nearly as often. Notice Jack 10 is now betting less often compared to 60 big blinds deep because you really don't want to bet it and get shoved. And when you do bet it, you're often using the small size so you can bet and then call the raise. So that is something you'll see happen as well. Okay? A lot of people look at these charts and think they're like similar, but recognize 60 big blinds deep, you should be using a much bigger bet size on this dynamic board. And you do a little bit more slow playing, right? And a little bit more being cautious with your drawing type hands. Let's discuss the importance of equity denial. You're going to want to fast play your strong but non-nutted hands, like top pair good kicker. Also, you're going to find that as stacks are deeper and deeper, your stack off threshold is higher. So you have to play your top pair hands a little bit more cautiously. Because imagine if you're 250 big blinds deep and your opponent wants to put in all their money on the flop. Top pair, top kicker is not that good. But if you're 25 big blinds deep and your opponent wants to put all their money in on the flop, top pair, top kicker is the effective nuts. So that allows you to be more aggressive in general with those types of hands. Also, you're going to find that just winning the pot immediately and cleaning up your equity and not having to worry about bad turns and rivers is very often the ideal strategy to take. So let's take a look at two different spots again. Button versus big blind on King 10-5. 60 big blinds deep on the left, 25 big blinds on the right. On the flop, the big blind checks, the button bets 25% pot. Here is what the big blind should do. So what we want to look at here is how often are you raising 60 big blinds deep compared to 25 big blinds deep, and also what sizes are generally preferred. And notice here, the dark red color is raise 75% pot, which is decently big. The light red color is raise 40% pot, which is decently small. 3 point something x your opponent's bet, or 2.5x your opponent's bet, something like that. Okay, notice 60 big blinds deep, you're raising only 13% of the time. Whereas 25 big blinds deep, you're raising 24% of the time. Like twice as often, almost. So what is raising far more often 25 big blinds deep? Well, notice a lot of top pairs put in a small check raise 25 big blinds deep. Whereas you don't really want to check raise something like King 3, 60 big blinds deep, because if you check raise the King 3 on the King 10-5 and your opponent wants to get it in, you're not loving it. But it's just a good enough hand when you are playing 25 big blinds deep. So because you cannot check raise as often with your top pairs, you have to then therefore check raise less often with bluffs. So notice the bluffs that are being used are pretty rough ones. Notice we have the Jack 9 for a gut shot. We have Queen 4, Jack 4, Queen 3, Jack 3, Queen 2, Jack 2, Ace 3, and Ace 2 with backdoor flush draws. This is optimistic. A lot of people do not find these bluffs, but you should. And then some junkers that wrap around the 5, like 7-6, 6-4, 6-3, 4-3, and 3-2 suited. A lot of people don't find these. A lot of people do not check raise these hands. Look, when I say a lot of people, I mean myself included. It's hard to find check raises with these junky hands. Notice also what does not check raise are draws, like good draws, like Queen Jack. Notice Queen Jack, 60 big blinds deep, is almost never check raising. Now, why would that be? A lot of people think Queen High, I have a draw, I'm out of position, I want to check raise. But if you think about it, if you check the flop and your opponent bets 2 big blinds and you make it 7, you're starting to get a lot of your money in already, right? And also they could re-raise you and then make you fold Queen Jack. You don't want to check raise a hand that has decent equity that would then have to fold. If you notice actually here, all the quote unquote draws are pretty junk because when you check raise them and get called, you don't love it, right? And if you get re-raised, you can easily fold. It's fine. It's fine to easily fold your junky draws. But if you check raise Queen Jack, it gets way dicier. Notice 25 big blinds deep, you're check raising a lot more King X, almost all of them, right? So because you're check raising almost all the King X, you get to check raise more hands in general. Notice we have the Jack 9 and the Queen 9 for gut shots. Queen Jack is now check raising. If you check raise Queen Jack, you can just get it in. And then still hands that wrap around the 5, plus even more of the Ace 4, Ace 3, Ace 2, Queen 4, Queen 3, Queen 2, Jack 4, Jack 3, Jack 2. Also some real junkers with 9-7 suited, 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited. These feel kind of hard to find. I don't know if I would find these. You also get to check raise more bottom pairs just for value / protection. Remember I always said here that taking down the pot now and not having to worry about facing action on the turn and river is very, very important, which is why you see some of these junky pairs putting in the check raise small. You got to realize when you check raise small, if your opponent folds anything, it's a pretty good success. And at least in my experience, if you check the flop, your opponent bets 1.5 big blinds, and you make it, let's say 4, they're just going to fold unless they have something. And you got to realize they raised on the button. I mean, go back here to the 25 big blind preflop chart. On the button, something like this. Notice they're going to have a whole lot of missed hands on the King 10-4. Yeah, they have lots of top pairs. They have some 10s, they have some draws. They also have a whole lot of nothing. Or at least hands that are going to have a tough time continuing. If the continuation bet too often, then and this is definitely a spot that you want to be attacking. Based on what you're saying about the stack-off threshold, what point does top pair, top kicker on the flop become a hand where you should play more cautiously? It depends on the board, right? If there's like a straight on the board already, top pair's really not loving it. If there's a flush on the board, top pair's not loving it. If it's like King 7-2 and you have King Jack, that's pretty good. It's like almost a nuts, right? So you have to realize top pair does not really matter. What matters is where does your hand sit in relation to all other hands that could be available. Because I mean, sometimes if you have a 4 flush board, top pair's total garbage, right? Or if you have a 4 straight board, top pair's not so good. But if you have a very uncoordinated flop, top pair's great. Same question about draws. At what point do you want to raise them? Typically, you don't want to raise draws that would have to fold to a shove that are getting roughly the break-even price. You typically don't want to raise any hands that would have to fold to an all-in that are getting roughly the break-even price. You either want to be able to call it profitably or don't raise it to begin with, or have it the draw being so bad to the point that you can easily fold, right? Like when you check raise the queen 2 of diamonds on king 10-5 and your opponent rips it all in on you, fold. You have no equity, right? Find that in local turbo, some players are prone to shove from any position with a marginal hand pre-flop. Call with better hands than them. If your opponents go all in with nothing or marginal hands, just call with good hands. Like if they're shoving the ace 2, don't go around folding ace jack. Let's see. You play nitty when you're the short stack. Sometimes you say screw it and you rip it all in. I would recommend you try to play well. A lot of people get it in their minds, or maybe it's not even in their minds. This may be just something they do where they kind of lose their mind after a while. They sit there, they play good poker for a while, they get short, they think, I need to do something. They get desperate. They have all these thoughts going through their head that simply do not matter. I was talking to someone the other day, and he's like, yeah, I'm playing in the game, and my opponents were talking to me about how I'm being too nitty, and about how I'm not going to get action, but then every time I raise, I get a ton of action. It's like, why are you letting these people get in your head? Why are you getting in your own head? Realize all you can do is try to play your current situation as profitably as possible based on the ranges at play. And ranges will change, of course, based on all sorts of things, position, stack depths, etc., etc. Let's talk about how premium hands are going to slow play more often. You want to deny equity more as stacks get shallow, as we just saw with top pair and some bottom pair and whatnot. But when you have the nuts, you know you'll be able to get your stack in by the river because the pot is already big compared to your stack, right? The stack to pot ratio is relatively shallow. So you get to slow play more. This also helps protect your medium strength hands that would have to fold by the time you get to the river. This is especially true when your opponents are being very aggressive. When your opponents are betting or raising, you let them keep betting and raising. You do not want to re-raise and make them fold. That would be a disaster. So let's take a look at a scenario where 60 big blinds deep, we raise the low jack and the big blind call. Or sorry, the low jack raises and the big blind calls. Flop comes 9-8-5, big blind checks, low jack continuation bets, 2/3 pot, as they should do on this dynamic board, kind of like we just saw earlier, right? Here's what the big blind does. 60 big blinds deep and then 20 big blinds deep. 60 big blinds deep, take a look at what is check raising. We are check raising 60 big blinds deep with, well, not a whole lot to begin with, right? Only 11% of hands. On 9-8-5, we are check raising some sets, some two pairs, not a lot. You may be surprised to see two pair really doesn't do a whole lot of raising. We're check raising 7-6 for a draw. Check raising some top pairs, check raising some drawing type hands. But really not a whole lot of check raising in general because the opponent bet big on this flop. When they bet big on the flop, they should naturally be kind of polarized. Therefore, we do not get to do a whole lot of check raising. Notice some pretty spicy ones getting in there. King 2 of diamonds and whatnot. Maybe this king 2 of clubs. So there are flush draws available. So a lot of these that are raising will have flush draws. So I guess that makes sense. Notice we do have like ace 7 with the ace of clubs or king 7 with the king of clubs check raising. It's pretty strong. Take a look 20 big blinds deep though. What I really want to look at are the premium hands. What are premium hands on 9-8-5? Well, it's going to be 9-8. Notice 9-8 literally never raises, even though there's a flush draw available. 9-5 never raises, and pocket fives never raises. If we have aces, we also don't even raise all that often if we did slow play it. So this is a spot where we really just do not raise very often with our super good hands. And alternatively, notice 20 big blinds deep, ace 9, king 9, queen 9, jack 9, 9-7, 9-6. Top pair, like we just saw in the previous example, are happy to get the money in immediately because they're almost always good, but they're very, very vulnerable. If you're very short stacking at a premium hand or a flop of premium hand, should you adjust your bets down to keep multiple people in the pot? Well, I mean, if it's essentially the answer is no. You want to play all of your hands as the GTO solver recommends. Notice in this scenario, we're mostly check raising big with our top pair type hands. Not really sure about the exact question, but it's a spot where you see you're just using smaller bet sizes in general with shorter stacks, right? And that's not necessarily to keep the opponents in, but it's because the stack to pot ratio is already going to be deep such that Again, you just don't have to put in a lot of money immediately to get it all in by the river. Give me just 1 second. Okay. All right. So yeah, that is that. This is a tiny portion of what I have released at pokercoaching.com in our brand new course called Tournament Domination, Insights from the Pros, featuring all of these people. Shannon Shore with his Poker Go Cup. I have one there and a few in Vegas. We got Brock Wilson, the human computer. We got Chris Brewer, cash game crusher and tournament superstar. We have me. We have Aram Zobian, who won the Poker Masters earlier this year. And Justin Saliba, just GTO, maybe the best GTO player in the entire world. All making content for you. In this brand new course, our coaches have picked their very best topics to teach you how to dominate tournaments. So if you're looking to dominate tournaments, this is for you. This course is not for sale. But if you sign up for pokercoaching.com premium during our Black Friday sale, you will get access to the course for free. The sale is live right now. How to play Ace King when you miss. I just noticed that. Haha, we're not talking about Ace King when you miss today. That was a previous webinar. You can get Poker Coaching Premium for $649 for the entire year. I actually learned a lot in the process of going through these people's content. I especially loved Aram Zobian's course. He told me the other day that he showed it to a few of his good, strong poker playing friends, and they're like, ooh, this is too valuable to put out. And maybe they're right. Also, Shannon Shore reviews his deep run in the Bet MGM tournament that I think he chopped or took second, something like that. And he goes through every single spot before the flop and after the flop in the solver, adjusting for the payout implications and perhaps how he thinks the opponents are going to play. And it's insightful. I mean, look, final table strategies are hard, but I learned a lot in the process of going through the content, and I am very sure you will too. So, topics in this course include short stack strategy by me, both pre-flop and post-flop, and in final table scenarios. Turn and river GTO strategies by Justin Saliba. Exploits in large field tournaments by Aram Zobian. Live and online final table strategies by both Shannon and Chris Brewer. And how to defend against aggression by Brock Wilson. You recommend this to all your poker friends. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Like I said, you can get Tournament Domination for free when you sign up to Poker Coaching Premium right now at pokercoaching.com/Black Friday. This is the best price we're going to have on Poker Coaching Premium ever. I'm making them get rid of insane deals. Clearly, heck of a value compared to if you just sign up monthly. $649 for the year. I hope you check it out, and I hope you learn a ton. You've read a lot about stack to pot ratio counts only on the flop, but most people count it towards the river. Stack to pot ratio counts. Well, your stack to pot ratio is always relevant in various scenarios. It's important to realize how much money you have in relation to the pot. So, I mean, yeah, of course it matters. You can bet different types of hands as the stack to pot ratio changes. I believe Justin Saliba has a pretty big course on this in the advanced cash game course, in the advanced tournament course on pokercoaching.com, discussing essentially like stack off thresholds, right? Kind of like we just saw a minute ago, like right here, big blind versus button. Whenever you flop top pair 25 big blinds deep, you're putting in a raise because the stacks are short to the point that top pair is pretty good. In 3-bet pots, if you're playing kind of deep, top pair is really good, right? But as we see, as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, then you can't get it in quite as wide. And this becomes even more pronounced as you get really, really deep. Now, a lot of your opponents are not going to be aware of this. They're just going to get top pair and get it in for 150 big blinds and think they're unlucky if they lose. And that's fine and good. Your opponents are torching their money. And if they're torching their money, well, that is very, very good for you. Like I said, the Black Friday sale is live now. It's a little bit early, but I know some of you have been asking for this course for a while. We've been building it for quite a while. We just uploaded it to the site. It just got pushed live today. So if you want access to it immediately, if you're already a Poker Coaching Premium member, you already have it. It's right there available for you. All of the content, by the way, in Poker Coaching Premium is there for the members. We have the Tournament Masterclass, Cash Game Masterclass, the Advanced Tournament course, the Advanced Cash Game course, this new Tournament Domination series. We have a series from Aram, where Aram goes through lots of his deep runs in the World Series main event. We have lots of super duper high level GTO stuff from Justin Saliba, Chris Brewer, and Brock Wilson. We also have David Peters making some content on the site now. That's a lot of fun, and a lot of other great coaches. Check it out. Get in there right now at pokercoaching.com/Black Friday. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I hope you run hot. I hope life treats you well. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or anything like that, let me know in the comment section down below. Click the notification bell. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Should you go through the Tournament Masterclass before the Domination course? I would always recommend people go through the Tournament Masterclass before anything else. The Tournament Masterclass and or Cash Game Masterclass is where you want to get started. That's like a prerequisite to understanding how to play good, strong, fundamentally sound poker. My goal with poker coaching is to teach you how to think like a GTO solver, adjusting for payout implications and adjusting for things your opponents do incorrectly. The goal here is not to memorize charts and try to just study every single spot available. That's not really what you want to do. You want to learn why the solver does what it does so you can roughly replicate it in your own games. Does poker coaching premium include peak GTO? It does not. We had a bundle we just sold. If you missed out on that, well, send us an email and we might be able to still get you in it. Yeah. Check out pokercoaching.com. We have a ton of stuff there. It's at pokercoaching.com Black Friday. Go through, look at the site. You'll enjoy it. If you don't like pokercoaching.com, by the way, after you sign up, let me know within 30 days and I'll give you all your money back. If I do not help you get a lot better at poker, I do not want or deserve your money. So, you have nothing to lose. Get in there, study, improve your skills, and start dominating the game. Thanks again for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'll talk